Beginnings are always hard. More so than ever in today's entertainment industry. The sheer amount of options to choose from is so numerous that the first impressions and first minutes to hours are the most important in a new experience, to keep people interested. Let's talk about how Arknights does this. Oh boy, it's not gonna be an all too positive video today. We'll start with what's most important to me, the story writing. What the first chapters are doing storytelling-wise is relatively simple. The intro sets us into the body of an amnesiac person. For that reason, we have to clarify first what amnesia is. Not in its definition, but what it is used for in story writing. Amnesia is a very simple way of creating missing information and character drama. You either have the option of writing a plotline with a flow of information getting to the main characters to overcome their challenges, or you conveniently make those crucial infos pop up out of nowhere by having your amnesiac person remember what's necessary. The latter is easier to use. This might be why it's often part of weak stories and characters, giving amnesia overall a frowned upon position. It gets quite hard relatively soon to outweigh negative examples of it with positives. Besides the classical information hole, amnesia is often used in a second context, introducing a world. The beginning of a story is always both crucial and difficult to make right. Overly forced world exposition can throw one out of the immersion fast when it starts to feel unnatural. Throw someone in an unknown world and you won't have to think about a way of introducing the world to the viewer, since the main protagonist simply needs the introduction themselves. From there, the viewer can get accustomed to the world at the same pacing as the main character. Amnesia is used as this simple set-off point. The amnesiac instinctively asks about who they are and what has happened. In return, their surroundings would answer those questions ideally. It's very convenient and easy to write. This gets even clearer when you look at the most overused trope in anime: isekai. The parallels between an isekai and an amnesiac protagonist are simple. Both don't know things about their surroundings and need an introduction to those new circumstances. Besides the boom in popularity, this simplicity of creating an isekai has helped its rise tremendously. The easier something is to create, the more people do it, and the higher the chance that there will be some good isekai. Being new in the world also helps with character identification. The Doctor represents us very accurately, as we would basically be in the same situation. The beginning of Arknights takes this simplistic approach even further and takes one of two basic paths. You either have enough time in the beginning of a story to slowly start explaining things at a moderate pace, or a sort of crisis makes this impossible and guides the exposition at the start by itself. The complexity of Arknights suits this approach well. If you would need to introduce Arknights' world and story to someone, how would you do that? Start with something and you will be inevitably forced to explain more. What's Rhodes Island? Well, then what is oripathy? And what is originium? And so on. Being in an emergency situation, attention concentrates on the problem and blends out surroundings. There's neither the need nor the time at the beginning for big expositions. It simply creates a good reason to keep things simple for now, and one doesn't get dumped with billions of names and terms from the start. So here's the short rundown of episode 0. The start immediately only answers the basic questions. Who are we? A certain organization's important person with a lot of trust and reputation. Where are we? A city called Chernobog in Ursus. What's the current situation? We're being rescued and, seemingly by coincidence, this overlaps with an attack on the city by infected calling themselves Reunion. What are infected? People ridden by the sickness oripathy, who are on top of that heavily oppressed. This provides everything we need to know for now to survive and overcome the situation. All of this is of course accompanied by small details already, but it will be repeated over the course of the coming chapters and time with the game. The character cast we start off with is kept at the bare minimum for now too, to not overload things much more. Even the story is kept very simplistic, for better or worse. It's getting established that Rhodes Island good, Reunion bad, although they only exact revenge. Nerl, Ace and Amir couldn't portray White Knights much better. while the rummaging of Reunion and Mephisto also paint a pretty clear first impression. So all we do is try to evacuate this hellscape, which also keeps the pacing of the reading very fast, at least compared to today's standard. Episode 1 follows up with a little bit more background to the one positive thing about being infected and all its heavy negatives, while we rest in an illegal clinic for infected. This also shows off the infected versus infected struggles, which would become a big part of the first story arc. As the clinic refused to aid Reunion in the riot, they too got overwhelmed by their forces. You're either with us or against us. From here on out, Arknights makes it pretty clear that this won't be a pretty story. Infights, us being unable to protect innocent civilians, and death everywhere. This gets rounded off with a tease of every important antagonist of the first story arc and a cliché sacrifice by Ace to save us against an almighty villain. Why did you have to die so easily? At the end, it's time to go home, happy with the lives we still have. Where does this leave us now? The beginning can be summarized quite nicely. From a social point of view, it should be quite clear what kind of person others need you to be. Cannot's quote from Vigillo holds up perfectly for the start. Being the tactical commander of our squad, it throws us into a situation that even makes the gameplay somewhat logical. Speaking of which, everyone expects something different from a game. I think I'm not exaggerating when I say that no one without prior knowledge started to play Arknights and expected it to be a philosophical treasure trove of characters, ideals and stories. Expectations for a gacha game are generally not that high most of the time. Pretty PNGs and an addictive gameplay loop are common ground for them. I don't know if the low amount of text at the beginning is so sparse with the thought of creating less time between gameplay, or if it's just because they also didn't have too much to tell in the beginning. Looking at the low word count of events in the beginning, it's probably the latter and a lack of good writing experience. Point is, it at least gives most of the people what they want from a game. The gameplay and not a book. You want to hold your player hooked to the game with action and excitement, rather than with lore dump and a slow pace overall. It's a good thing that Arknights gameplay complements this and is very exciting and challenging in the beginning. But when the gameplay is not good in the beginning, what kept me playing? The lore? Well, the beginning, as just explained, is well known for its less ideal story introduction. For those who actually read it, this heavily includes the writing. The early chapters don't hold up a second against the great writing that we started to experience after some time. The early writing is clumsy, undetailed, and it gets stale very fast. It gets the introduction done, but not much else. Gameplay and lore are mediocre at best. But the thing that was great from the beginning already was the art style. This is not a secret, but characters just looked so interesting and detailed from the very start. It already gives you the feeling that the artists care and that the operators are fleshed out and real. They're not pawns to just fill gacha banners, but real characters. All the other stuff takes quite its while to catch up to that quality, especially the writing. I've seen a couple of opinions on when it really starts to pick off, but I'd side with the episode 6 one. There it really starts to go deeper and get more complex. The gameplay fortunately doesn't take that long. Where does this leave the beginning in all of this now? It is at best okay, but there must be some good parts, right? No, not really. The only saving grace it has is the setup it creates for much later. Terra's strength lies within the connections throughout the world and events. An obscure wanderer is set in Kazimierz, but also highlights their conflict with Leitanion. Guiding ahead is supposed to be a meeting of a big set of countries in the background, and even Grani and the Knight's Treasure prepares one of the best plotlines out of its focus. This makes the world feel more alive and realistic. There is equally much to find in the early chapters, including 2 and 3. The big implications include whatever December 23rd as a date has in significance, which is still unclear even after years. They made this scene and said, yeah, come back in 7 years, it will surely get relevant by then. Tallulah is another subtle hint for later. Chapter 3 already tells that she has a connection with Langman, but why is she talking about herself in third person? Foreshadowing and connectivity have always been around, some subtle enough that one doesn't notice. Besides those big implications, there are also many small things like getting to know Nerl being the Radiant Knight, or Penguin Logistics and Blacksteel getting introduced, fitting Arknights' overall first introductionary phase. More hidden and unnoticeable details include Guard being rescued by Ace, which has not much meaning until the finale of Act 1 and Chapter 13. Oh, and the clinic we rest at in Chapter 1 belonged to Helagur and is part of operational intelligence, just like the squad that W mentioned engaging at the end. Operational intelligence is in general a great effort to partially make the beginning events better through the eyes of other characters at the same time in other places. All of those details are by far not as condensed and numerous as they are now, but they already implement this connectivity between happenings. This doesn't help the beginning itself though. Could they have done it better? Absolutely. Although my preferred choice of simply having more to read would have probably turned away even more players. This makes it hard though for people like me to stick with the game. Lore enjoyers will love the later parts of the game, but they will have to survive the beginning. It's like you're saying that One Piece gets good after 500 episodes. The way till there is still very long. Thankfully, the anime can take over the part of telling the early chapters now. And even though it's far from perfect, it is miles ahead of the game doing the job. And it is still necessary after all to understand what is going on afterwards. Starting to read Arknights outside its release order is doable. It will miss a lot of points and references though, that make events more impactful. Children of Ursus, for example, is a great story on its own. Knowing the context about it within the early chapters makes it even better. Point is, the first hours and days of Arknights don't really do one or the other really great. Lore and writing are lackluster and the gameplay is mediocre. And all of this gets accompanied by the everlasting trope of amnesia. I've seen my fair share of amnesia being used in stories. Most of them have been bad, with a few exceptions. Where do I sort the Doctor in this scheme? In the beginning, this is for sure used as the convenient story entry that this condition brings with it, and it stays like that pretty long. The first 2 chapters feature him as a centerpiece on the stage, and it's the primary reason why the reader should care. Who are we? But once we leave Chernobyl, things around the Doctor become notably silent. Focus shifts from the protagonist to ironically more pressing issues. The first act is not about him. It is about an introduction and understanding of the core problem in this story. Infection. The time is being used to explore the conflicts brought by the most influential material on Terra that Originium is. And since the Doctor is so tightly connected to Originium, a better understanding of it and its impact is necessary to understand the Doctor. This is where the amnesia part is getting really good. It's not just used as a cheap plot device, but is well thought out and important for the main plotline. The happenings up to Chapter 8 are all part of laying the ground for that. After getting acquainted with the world for over a year, it was time to start talking about the Doctor. Chapter 8 started with this already, and Vigillo made a great impression of how much there is to a character that barely spoke up till then. Somehow they got away with creating this mystery at first, sweeping it under the rug for over a year, and getting back to it to show why the Doctor is the protagonist. And it works. After that 1 year. Arknights might not be a perfect example of how to use amnesia to begin a story with. It became one that shows how to use it to its full potential though. It's not the Doctor's defining characteristic, nor is it a one-time plot device. It is used to push character development to its limits. Kalzit, Armia, Theresa, Babel and Vigillo all deal with this person that has been robbed of their former self. The impact of his memory loss is so big that it can hardly be summarized in a couple sentences. And that is what makes a trope into an unforgettable memory. Something that can't be said about the first hours of Arknights. The beginning is filled with mediocrity and lacks a real boom. There are so many memorable moments in the game, be it in its story or gameplay. For once, I just wish that they made the first hours more flashy, more exciting. It feels kind of frustrating to see this opportunity being left out. And it will very likely never be remade. As it stands now, those early hours are bound to be forever forgotten in a sea of great stories.